Well, it's inaccurate. It's inaccurate, first of all, for you to think that just because you are not personally benefiting, materially benefiting from American power, from Western power, or anyway, that you are not benefiting as much as others, or even if you're discriminated against in that country, even if you're mistreated in that country, even if you're exploited in that country, in America, it's inaccurate for you to think that that means that you should be exempt from our general judgment about the West, Muslim judgment and Global South judgment about the West, that you're blameless and innocent and that you're immune from the toxicity of that culture and the toxicity of that mentality. That's inaccurate. Maybe you didn't make the food, but you ate the food. You understand? Okay, you didn't cook it, but you ingested it. The smell gets on your clothes. It gets in your skin. It permeates you. You are affected by that culture. You're affected by that mindset. You're affected by that mentality. Yes, okay, like I said, maybe you're not the architects of the system, but you were brought up in that system. You are the products of the system. So it doesn't matter. In this regard, it doesn't matter. If the system does mistreat you, it made you. And you're going to have to unmake everything about yourself that the system built in you. You understand? Built in your psyche, built in your attitude, built in your habits, built in your thinking, built in your behavior. All of that has to be unmade. You know, people always say in my comments, the comments on my videos, that I must only be talking about the powerful, the rich and the powerful in the West, in America. Or I'm only talking about so-called white people. I'm talking about the rich, what have you, the people at the top of the hierarchy. Because the idea is that everyone else is just the powerless victims of the power structure. The power structure has done wrong by them too. So they shouldn't be lumped in with all of the people at the top of the hierarchy, the top of the power structure, the so-called ruling class, the beneficiaries of the power structure, and so on. No, you're missing the point. Yes, agreed, you are victims. And I've said that many, many times. You absolutely are victims. The Western people are victims of their so-called civilization. Your so-called civilization, what they have done to you is truly horrific. But it has been done to you. You understand? You are victims, sure, but the damage is done. The damage to your thinking, the damage to your understanding, the damage to your personality, and so forth. Like I say, to your psyche, to your soul. And now you're a certain kind of way. And you are the way you are. Even if you were made that way by a vicious power structure that has also exploited you, has also oppressed you, you know, that also does not care about you at all. Yes, all of that is true. But it doesn't change the reality of what you have become, what they have made you. I mean, imagine someone who was who grew up, say, being taught only like 20 or 30 words. That's all they know. And they've been taught that any other words that they ever hear is just a gibberish language that evil people use for casting magic spells. Okay, they were taught all sorts of outlandish things, strange, wrong things about the world. This is what they were taught. They were taught that dogs are cattle and birds are fish, and so on and so on and so on. They were taught that the sun is a giant glow-in-the-dark frisbee. I mean, whatever. Okay, they were completely miseducated, maliciously miseducated. Yes, certainly, those people are not the ones who taught themselves these things. They didn't miseducate themselves, but they have been taught these things, and this is how they think now. And that it just is what it is. I agree completely that a crime has been committed against you, but that does not free you from the consequences or the impact of the crime that was committed against you. There's a lasting effect. It's a shame. It's a pity that your culture, that your power structure, that your so-called civilization has damaged you the way it has done. But the fact of the matter is that the damage is done. And that's not something that the people of the Global South or the people of the Muslim world have to fix. We're not your ex machina, the tribal healer who appears out of nowhere in the desert and pulls the white hero out of the desert into a cave and nurses him back to health. The so-called magical Negro trope, who patiently imparts timeless wisdom to connect the white hero with his soul, or the Asian monk who helps you find your chi, or what have you. The East does not exist to heal the West. The entirety of the rest of the global population are not your supporting backup characters. And the truth of the matter is that we're writing you off. We have to write you off. We're writing you out of the script. You are badly written characters from start to finish anyway. Let's be honest. From the beginning, you were badly written characters. There's been no character arc in your story whatsoever. That's the brutal truth. The way you were 10,000 years ago, you're that same way right now. No development, no evolution, no change, no advancement. Yes, we have suffered as a result of what your society, your power structure, your so-called civilization, what they did to you. We suffered tremendously because of what they did to you, because then that caused you to do things to us. Crusades, imperialism, colonization, neocolonization, globalization, slavery, exploitation, extraction, subjugation, invasion, occupation, violence, war, so on. Everyone knows. Everyone knows what you have done to us. And you could only do what you did to us because of what was done to you. But we have to focus upon healing ourselves from what you have done. No one in the global south needs to heal the West. That's not our job. We're busy trying to heal ourselves from what the West has done to us. But yes, I agree with you, and I have said it many times, you are victims too. Your minds, your psyches, your morality, your spirituality, intellectually, you've been victimized by your society. They programmed you for malfunction. They programmed you to malfunction. It's like malnourishment, over generations, how it creates permanent defects in human beings, where you've been spiritually, morally, intellectually malnourished for scores of generations, not one or two, scores of generations. Intellectual inbreeding. Yes, intellectual inbreeding. That is exactly what has happened in the West and to the West and to you. For centuries, they have isolated their thinking within their own ideological gene pool, mating the same philosophies over and over and over again. Greek rationalism, so-called, Enlightenment arrogance, liberalism with secularism, with secular materialism, humanism, capitalism with colonial ambition, and calling all of that evolution, progress in thinking. But it's not evolution, it's genetic decay. When you restrict your breeding to a small circle, to a small gene pool, that doesn't strengthen the species, it weakens the species. You start to see congenital deformities. And the same thing happens in the realm of ideas, in my opinion. Western thought has been reproducing with itself for so long that it has lost vitality, creativity, and realism. Every new philosophy that you come up with is just another inbred offspring of the same old parents. Descartes, Darwin, Locke, Nietzsche, Freud, and Marx. Each generation is more deformed than the last. They congratulate themselves for their so-called progress, but what they call innovation is just another mutation of the same defective lineage. And no, this does not only affect those at the top of the hierarchical power structure. It affects everyone, every single one. People in the West cannot escape the parameters of their own mythology. You're stuck. You're absolutely stuck. Even though you'll call it freedom of thought, we all know that the range of acceptable ideas is more narrow than ever. Everything must conform to your foundational Western dogmas. And any idea that comes along that challenges those axioms is treated like it's a genetic contamination and immediately rejected. That's why they can't genuinely dialogue with anyone else in the world, with the rest of the world. They've built epistemological walls that are so high that any light from any other civilization simply cannot reach them. The result is that the modern Western mind, while brilliant in technical manipulation, is deformed in moral perception. It can design a chip, a microchip that's smaller than a fingernail, but you can't tell right from wrong. You can colonize Mars, but you don't know how to coexist with humanity. That's what happens when you breed intellect only within the same family of arrogance and disbelief. It produces monstrosities. It produces monstrosities and deformities that mistake power for wisdom or power for morality or power for right. It's just like with their old monarchies and their aristocracies in Europe. These weird, inbred, misshapen mutants. And then the rest of the people try to emulate them, the common people. Just because those are the people who are at the top of the social hierarchy, the highest class, and so on. So everyone tries to act like these and resemble these freaks of nature. They become the standards of beauty and sophistication. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, Africa, Asia, the Muslim world, and so on, still have access to the broader human gene pool of thought. We can actually integrate revelation with reason, tradition with science, community with individuality, and so forth. We can actually think vertically and horizontally. The West can't. It's a so-called civilization that is suffering from hereditary insanity, congenital insanity, convinced that their deformities are beauty. And for many, many years, you were holding a gun to our heads to make us tell you how pretty you are. But that's the only reason we ever said it, because the gun was to our heads. But like all inbred dynasties, it eventually is going to collapse under the weight of its own defects. It's not going to collapse because of invasion, external invasion from outside, but because of degeneration from inside. Because the intellect can only reproduce with itself for so long before it becomes sterile. The Western mind has reached this point. Yes, like I said, it's a shame. It's a shame and it's a pity that this was done to you, that your so-called civilization has betrayed you like this, that your so-called civilization has condemned you to intellectual deformity and obsolescence. They never built your character as a people. They never built your morality. They never built your minds. They stunted your development and kept you primitive. And it's a shame, but it is what it is. This is why there's been no advancement in your character for literally thousands of years, literally for millennia. You were predators and scavengers then, and you are now in your thinking, in your behavior, in your morality, in your priorities. And this manifests in literally every area of your life, as I've talked about many, many times. I mean, just look at your bizarre adversarial combative relationship that you have between men and women in your society. Honestly, it's colonization and conquest in microcosm. Your misogyny, your objectification, and so forth. Well, right now, you're trying to build robots, robot girlfriends, AI girlfriends. This is the same instinct that your culture never matured itself out of. This is why the Power Moon content was really an introduction to psychological decolonization for Middle Nation. Because the West's relationship with women, their attitude about women, is the most acute expression, really, of their core dysfunction, their misogyny, okay? Their hatred of women, their dehumanization of women, which they'll only admit to being objectification, but objectification is dehumanization. This is the most personal and the most intimate manifestation of the exact same impulses that drove colonization, that drove conquest. Because the truth of the matter is that their hatred for women is not based upon hatred for women, it's based upon desire for women, their need and their dependency. Because there's nothing in creation for men, there's nothing in creation which men love more, that they desire more, and that they want to acquire more than women, or access to women. Women are the original natural resource. And how does this desire, or how does this need always manifest itself in the West for natural resources? Hatred, violence, and domination. That's how it always manifests. As long as you have these attitudes, and as long as you have this behavior, and frankly, this confusion about women, and in terms of your approach to women, everyone in the world is going to always know that you have never evolved. Because you treat everything that you value as a threat to be defeated. And conquest has to be total, complete annihilation of sovereignty, of dignity, of rights, of agency. Because you're terrified of that resource, that natural resource, not belonging to you. So you need it chained. You need it enslaved. You need it subjugated. You need it completely pacified and neutralized, caged in your pocket. Like you're some ragged, scrounging barbarian in the barren wilderness of Europe, primordial Europe. You literally think that domination and acquisition are the same thing as civilization, but obviously they're not. And it's too bad. It's too bad that you think this way. But unless and until you do develop a more mature understanding, you simply don't have a role in the future. I'm sorry to say. No one ever listened to you. Understand? No one ever listened to you because you were right. We listened to you because you had a gun pointed at our heads. We weren't nodding along to what you were saying because we agreed with you or because what you were saying was right. We were nodding along because we wanted to stay alive. But you never learned the difference between being right and being lethal, because you decimated anyone and everyone who ever tried to show you the error of your ways, anyone who ever challenged you, anyone who ever criticized you, anyone who even tried to teach you, anyone who ever even tried to help you. You never valued any lessons that anyone ever could teach you unless it could teach you how to take, how to conquer, how to extract, how to trick, and how to scam and cheat and steal, how to acquire. Those are the only lessons that you ever valued or cared about. And this is your attitude towards education until today, until right now. You created a whole system, okay? An economic system, a political system that replicates the harsh conditions of your primordial past. Just modernized marauders. Well, this path only leads to oblivion. And the precursor to oblivion is exclusion. You understand? And now you're going to be excluded. I mean, America itself is already withdrawing from the global stage, like one of those whales, that throws itself on the beach because it knows the end is coming. That's America right now. But the rest of the world, the Muslim world, Africa, Asia, the global South, okay, you're being excluded from the conversation. You don't have a seat at the table when we're discussing matters because you don't bring anything useful. You don't bring anything informative or constructive to the conversation. You can't. And we have every right to do this. We have every right to exclude you. And this is what you have literally done for centuries to literally everyone else. You excluded everyone's voices. You muted everyone's voices. Like I've said before, you never, ever practiced democracy or freedom of speech or inclusion anywhere else in the world. All of these things that you talk about, human rights, civil rights, women's rights, the rights of children, so on and so on and so on. You didn't care about any of that one bit in the lands that you colonized and subjugated, of, for, and by the people. You weren't of us. You weren't for us. And your rule wasn't by us, not in Afghanistan, not in Iraq, not in Algeria, not in Congo, not in South Africa, not in India, or anywhere else that you colonized. I mean, the fact that you can even show your face in public talking about of, for, and by the people, talking about democracy, while you are imposing your rule through violence, through coercion, through invasion, through colonization, through occupation. The fact that you can even do that has made you completely dismissible by the rest of the world as someone who is fundamentally dishonest, as a nation or as a people, as a so-called civilization that is fundamentally dishonest. What a people do habitually, they become known for. And you have become known for barbarism, for hypocrisy, for theft, and for deceit. And like I've said, you have been intellectually inbreeding with the same gene pool of lies and propaganda that now your minds are deformed. Your minds are broken at this point, and no one listens to you anymore, because why would they? You're reaching the end point. You're reaching the inevitable end point of the way that you have been. And as long as you remain the way that you have been, I don't see any way. I don't see how you can have a meaningful role on this planet, honestly, a contributive role, instead of a destructive, corrosive role, which is what you have had until now. Let's be honest. Just a destructive, destabilizing, corrupting, degrading, dehumanizing role. That has been the role of the West in the history of the human race. And for you, it's important for you to understand why. The why is not at all our problem. This is your problem to sort out. You understand me? What makes you like this? Now, again, no, I'm not just talking about the rich and the powerful, because there isn't a single person in that so-called civilization, no matter what your class is, no matter what your position in the society is, no matter what your status is, no matter what your wealth is, your income, no matter no matter whether you came from somewhere else or not, or no matter even if your ancestors came from somewhere else or were brought from somewhere else in chains. It doesn't matter. There isn't a single person in that society who is unaffected. Like I said, maybe you didn't make the food, but you ate the food, and that food is poison, and you have ingested it, and you have been poisoned by it, and now you're sick. That's a fact. There's not a nicer way to say it. You're sick now. I've never heard in my life a Muslim in the Muslim world, or frankly, anyone in the global South, even non-Muslims, making excuses, for example, for why they have not done this or that, why they have not, say, fulfilled a promise or fulfilled a commitment, something that they said they were going to do, why they haven't been productive and so forth. I've never in my life heard them saying their excuse by means of saying, I'm just dealing with a lot of issues right now. I have a lot of issues. I'm just not in a good headspace lately. You know, I'm going through a lot. And so you never hear this because all you're talking about is normal daily life. You're just talking about the normal tasks, the normal challenges, the normal situations that everyone deals with. But you have no coping skills in the West. You're absolutely overwhelmed by regular human existence. You know, if someone in our part of the world fails to do this or that, they will tell you exactly what came up that prevented them from doing this or that. And it's literally always just a very practical thing. You know, I had to pick up my aunt from the airport. My newborn is not sleeping at night. Something very specific. I had to study for my exams or whatnot. Okay? It's never just some vague, I'm just in a constant state of emotional crisis type of a thing. This is a very Western phenomenon. The Western self-absorbed main character inability to cope with life. They did this to you. They made you like this. And you think it's normal because everyone around you is like that. Everyone around you is like that. But it's not normal, you know? But it's like, again, like those old Europeans, you know how they never washed? They defecated in the open. They were inbred. They did all sorts of things, all of which led to physical manifestations, physical symptoms, because it was all incredibly unhygienic and unhealthy. So they had scabs, they had sores, they had rashes, inflammation, blisters, and so forth, all over their skin. Their hair was full of lice. They had maggots in their wounds. But they thought it was all normal. They thought that was normal. They didn't have any idea that people in other parts of the world didn't live like this, didn't look like this, didn't have these grotesque manifestations of their unclean lifestyle, their unclean habits, their unhealthy habits. Meanwhile, anyone from outside, whoever encountered them, whoever encountered their stench, whoever encountered their leaking sores and their abscesses and so forth, well, they were repulsed. Well, you understand it's still like this today. This is what I'm telling you. You think all of the abnormalities of your society, the obsession with violence, the obsession with sex, with materialism, with cruelty, with domination, with consumerism and so on, this winner-take-all, dog-eat-dog, zero-sum approach to life, you think that all of these abnormalities are universal. And you think it's all just naturally part of the human condition. No. Just like your old European ancestors that thought that smelling like urine and smelling like sweat was just the normal state to be in, well, this is how you are about your unnatural, abnormal, peculiar ideologies and peculiar, abnormal, unnatural attitudes and behaviors. No, it's not normal. It's not normal at all. It's sick. Now, I know this is going to come across to you like I'm bashing you, right? Shahid always bashes the West. But that reaction in and of itself is a part of the sickness. It's a part of the condition because you have no introspection. You know, for a culture that is so self-obsessed and so constantly navel-gazing and so continuously talking about yourselves, you know, with all your therapy and your psychoanalysis and whatnot, your journaling, the truth is you have a staggering incapacity for any genuine self-reflection, any genuine introspection or self-critique, except on a very, very superficial level, or only as a means to rationalize or to self-exonerate or to self-praise. And you just get triggered and you just get defensive at any honest assessment of how dysfunctional your culture is. You know, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us about the hypocrites, the munafiqeen. When you try to correct them, when you try to advise them, well, they just double down and become even worse. And they just intensify in their bad behavior. And the Westerners are the same. See, this is why I was saying at the beginning, I get a lot of people saying that I'm only referring to the leaders. I must only be referring to the power brokers in the West or about so-called white people because I make reference, for example, to the European past. But this is because you're only thinking about colonization. You're only thinking about those particular crimes of the West, those very overt crimes of the West, the pillage and the plunder of the global South, imperialism and the Crusades and so forth. So you want to assert your innocence from all of that. You didn't do those things. You're not like that, etc., etc. And you're also thinking about the reality that you live in, the mostly miserable reality that you live in America, the crime, the violence, the drudgery, the poverty, the financial struggle, the paycheck to paycheck existence that you're suffering through, the inflation, and so forth, police violence. So you're thinking that because you are not an apparent beneficiary of the system, well, my criticism of the West shouldn't apply to you. But there are two things here. Understand me. There are two things here that we're talking about. There is what the West has done to us, and there's what the West has done to you. And like I said, what they have done to you has been done. And it has been done to everyone there, with no exceptions. And no, I'm not talking about the exploitation. I'm not talking about the taxes, the cost of living, and all of these various material miseries that you deal with. I'm not talking about all the ways that the power structure mistreats you and abuses you, that resembles the way that your power structure mistreats and abuses the people of the global South and the lands that they colonize. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the internal, inhuman damage that society has done to your mind, that society has done to your soul and to your humanity. Because the Muslim world and the global South is actually barely touched by that. Alhamdulillah. In the final accounting, wallahi, what the West has been able to do to their own people, what they have done to their own people, generation after generation, in my opinion, is a far worse crime than every crime committed by the Crusaders, committed by the colonizers, committed through pillage and plunder and violence against the global South, all of those crimes combined. The worst thing that you did to our collective psyche in the global South was, to one extent or another, to give us an inferiority complex and to export some of your racist ideas and false materialistic frameworks. But we're going to work through that. We can work through that because our roots are deep. Our roots are deep, our history is long, and our future is even longer. In the final accounting, the West's impact on the global South, ultimately, in the long record of history, is going to amount to little more than a jump scare. We'll be fine. The people of the global South, the people of the Muslim world, we're going to be fine. But I can't see how you're going to be fine. I don't see a way how you're going to be fine. Okay? I mean, let me put this in context. What I'm saying now, I'm saying for the post-collapse future that you're moving towards. Do you understand me? This is why I'm talking to you now about this. I'm not saying this for right now. I know that right now, most of what I'm saying is not going to be able to reach you. It won't be able to penetrate your minds. But you're heading towards a cascading collapse of your society. And you're going to need to understand this. You're going to need to understand what I'm saying in the aftermath that you're going to be living in. The problem that America has been for the rest of the world, that problem is going to be solved by this collapse. But that does not solve the problem that America has been for you. The collapse doesn't solve the problem that America has been for you. And I'm only talking about it because, like I said, it's not the Muslim world's problem. It's not the Muslim world's job. It's not the global South's job to try to fix you or to try to untangle all the crossed wires in your thinking processes, to try to debug your software. That's not our job. But I'm from there. That's where I was born. That's where I grew up. In that cult of America. Yes, that cult of America. And just like a cult, to everyone outside, to everyone else outside the cult, nobody cares about the people inside the cult. To the people outside, the people inside the cult are just strange, unrelatable, unhinged, and whatever happens to them, happens to them. That's their problem. They join the cult, they're in the cult, that's their problem. It's not our problem. But anyone who was in the cult and escapes the cult still cares about the people who are trapped inside it. And Pharaoh's palace, where you live, is undergoing a controlled demolition. You've been conditioned to be an inhabitant of Pharaoh's palace, and you are not suited for anything else. You're not equipped for anything else. You're not equipped to live outside those walls, or what happens when those walls fall down, and that's the tragedy of it. You've been trained for captivity, which makes you nothing but prey outside the cage that you grew up in. You know, it's going to be like if you release circus animals into the wild, thinking that all you have to do is do some tricks in order to get fed. You have been in an unnatural system that only taught you how to perform. They only taught you how to perform, not how to live. But that circus tent is falling down. I'm telling you, that's what's happening now. The circus tent is falling down, and the people who run that circus, they're already walking away. They already have walked away. Pharaoh has left the building. And all you have been trained to do is to worship Pharaoh as a god and to perform your rituals, to recite your dogmas inside the walls of that palace, to carry out your functions inside that Pharaonic cult. So what are you supposed to do now? Pharaoh left the building. Now you're living in the afterlife of your own so-called civilization, and you're mistaking muscle spasms for movement. Collapse is the moment when the parasite realizes that it has killed its host, and now it has to feed upon itself. America is the parasite. Its entire system was designed to consume, to devour, to inflate itself through extraction. But now you've extracted everything. Your resources, your allies, your morals, your meaning. And now with nothing left to consume, as I've said many times, the empire is turning inward, feeding on its own flesh, fighting itself, and fragmenting into tribal madness. You call it polarization, political polarization, but that's just a euphemism for self-cannibalization. That's what you're doing. You are living through the American apocalypse, yes. This is not just the collapse of the system. This is the collapse of all the illusions that sustain the system. You know, I've seen some fringe right-wing figures justifying slavery, and then left-wing figures reacting to the possibility of slavery being revived in America. But you understand that you're already operating under the illusion. It's an illusion you're operating under that slavery is even illegal in America. It's not illegal. They never outlawed slavery. They just added conditionality to it. You understand me? You never stopped having slaves in America. And it's exactly the same now as it was in the old days. First dehumanize, then enslave, because the dehumanization makes you eligible for enslavement. And the dehumanization today is criminalization. You understand? You know, I'm seeing people talk about, like with ICE, okay? You ought to get guns and defend yourself against ICE agents when they try to grab you off the street or grab you out your house. You know, coming to you without identifying themselves and so forth. You're within your rights to defend yourself. Okay, I understand that reasoning. But listen to me. Please understand me. You are being tricked by this reasoning. They're trying to get you into a civil war, trying to get you to fire at federal officers. That's treason, that's assault, that's murder, that's criminalization, and that's slavery. They're culling you. They're preparing you to be culled. And because they have long since short-circuited your thinking processes. They long since habituated you to just being told what to think, being told how to act, because they just turned you into basically a cluster of impulses that they can manipulate, that they can activate at will. Okay, they're just counting on you being corralled to go whichever way they want you to go. You know? I've been telling you that your government is being hollowed out, or it already has been hollowed out, and the only function of the federal government is really going to be this, the culling process, the culling program, the police state, because circus animals have no function once the circus is over. See, like with this ICE issue or any other, you know, they always talk about nonviolent protests or armed resistance, this binary. This is the binary that they give you. Either lay down in the street and block traffic or something like this, or go get you a gun. No, don't think in terms of violent or non-violent. Think in terms of prosecutable and not prosecutable. Like I've said before, this is how your law works in your country. Nothing is against the law except what can be proven to be against the law, so don't do anything against the law. You understand what I'm saying? The only crime in America is getting caught, so don't commit crime. Start trying to use your mind. Don't let them just trigger your reflex reactions and get you to do whatever they want you to do. It's not about violent or non-violent. It's about thinking and unthinking. But I digress. You are heading for great hardship. You are heading for great hardship in that country. That's a fact. Material hardship, oppression, brutality. And you're going to need more than activist strategies. You're going to need more than activist strategies and resistance strategies and so forth. You're going to need to heal the profound damage that has been done to your thinking, that has been done to your humanity, that has been done to your soul because you don't know how to make meaning out of anything anymore if it can't be monetized. This is the curse of the American pathogen. It destroys your ability to connect with reality except through possession and acquisition and control. And unless you purge that infection, unless you can expel that psychic malware that tells you life is a competition and wealth equals worth and liberty means license to do whatever you want and desire is identity, then you're not going to be able to survive in the new world that's forming. You have to be deprogrammed from that American cult thinking, that Western cult thinking, because it's unnatural, it's abnormal. And the post-collapse future is not going to be built for people who only know how to dominate and manipulate and exploit and coerce. It's going to be built by people who know how to cooperate. You're going to end up finding yourselves like exiles in a foreign planet that you once thought you owned, because the rest of the world is going to move on without you. They're going to move on without you, and they're doing it now, while you're still arguing about your pronouns and your profits. You have spent centuries exporting your dysfunction and calling it civilization. But there's still a mercy in this, because the collapse is also clarification. It provides a clarification for what's true and what's false. And maybe, inshallah, if you are willing to detoxify your soul from the American sickness, maybe you can start to rebuild, not as masters of the world, but as members of the world. That's what Middle Nation calls to. Whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, it doesn't matter. You are our brothers and sisters in humanity, and we care about you. Okay? Yes, you have done wrong to us. You've done wrong to us, and you've done wrong to yourselves, and wrong has been done to you. And the wrong that was done to you is largely what caused you to do wrong to us and to everyone else in the first place, while thinking the whole time that you were doing right. Because Shaitan makes the evil seem good to you. That's how he does. And no one has ever believed Shaitan more than you in this regard when he told you that the evil was good or that the wrong was right. So you have to find a way to rejoin the human story after centuries of hijacking it. To stop thinking of yourselves as the main characters, as the protagonists, and start thinking of yourselves as participants, not as conquerors, but as contributors.